Hello, we are back for Behind the Sermon. I am your host, as always, Jon Rhoades, welcomed by our preacher, Gregg. How you doing today, Chris?
Doing great, John. How are you?
I'm good. I hear you're on the Daniel fast. How's that
I am on the
you?
Daniel fast. I'm feeling really good.
Yeah?
I really feel good. I feel clean.
That's great. Did you have a little bit of a lull there without the caffeine?
First day, I took some aspirin but actually it's gone really well.
Good. Yeah. Sometimes I
look forward to it. Kind of look forward to it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad. Hey, don't forget that if you are watching this and you weren't able to watch the sermon from yesterday, you can always go on YouTube and watch that, or you can listen to that on the podcast, on either Apple Podcasts or on our website by itself. This video is great to watch on its own, but it's also made to be in conjunction with the sermon. So if you listen to the sermon and then listen to this, you'll get even more out of it. And just remember that you can always submit questions. You can submit questions on Facebook Live for us to talk about, or you can just message us on any of our social media platforms. We will get it and we will add that question in here. So Chris, yesterday you started off by talking about the bumper video.
Right.
And that little piece of wood or coal, whatever it was, I don't exactly remember, being placed in the fire, and you wish you were that
That's right.
piece because it was so
feeling
cool.
a little cool yesterday, and my hands just wouldn't warm up, and I wish that I were that piece of wood getting put back in the fire around a warm fire.
Right, and I don't know if you've ever been in a fire before. I surely hope not. I'm sure that would burn quite bad.
Right.
But I was wondering, what is the hottest place that you've ever been in? Maybe you were in a sauna, a hot car, I don't know. What is the hottest place you've ever been in?
I think the place that probably was the warmest for me, I was shoveling some grain in a grain bin on a mission trip, and they'd given me this mask.
Yeah.
And it was really hot outside, but the mask, the filters were clogged, so I wasn't getting any air at all.
Oh my goodness.
And so I was trying to shovel grain out of a grain bin to bag or something like that, and about passed out, but I was overwhelmed by the heat.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Now where was that? What were you on this trip here in the States?
It might have been
in
in Montana, out in Montana at a youth ranch, an orphanage. Yes.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. I've been in a sauna or two, and those get pretty hot, but unfortunately those you can just get out whenever you're done.
Right, I've been lightheaded in the sauna before.
Oh yeah.
Overcooked.
Yep. You don't want to be in there too long.
Nope.
Pass out or whatever. Not good for you. Well, hey, yesterday you talked about the woman in Luke chapter 7.
Right.
And she's not only in Luke chapter 7, she's in Matthew 18, I believe, I think it is. But you talked about how she was rejected.
Right.
And maybe, you talked about how it's possible, very probable that she was a prostitute and maybe she was rejected. And that way, many of us, we have never experienced rejection in that way, but we do experience rejection today. So I was wondering if you could give us a few more examples in addition to what you gave on Sunday about rejection that we might feel in our lives.
Well, I think sometimes in our jobs, if we don't perform as well, maybe an evaluation or maybe even being fired. In our marriage, maybe a lot of marriages don't work, so maybe through a divorce or a estranged parent or a relationship like that. In friendships where maybe you're not invited to something and you see it on Facebook or Instagram. Just so many subtle things. You're not invited to lunch as one of the employees, a certain few go and you don't go. Those kind of things. There's subtle forms of rejection all the time. Right.
Yeah, and some deeper ones would be, maybe abuse.
Right.
To be rejected in that way, to have your love for somebody or somebody's love for you be completely rejected by the way they treat you. Right. I had a friend. They went to church growing up all their lives, and they said that they felt rejected from church because of the judgment that was there. They said, I know I'm doing things wrong and I want to fix it, but, being told I'm the worst person in the world, and of course they were never told that, but that's how they felt.
Right.
They said, that was one way they felt rejected from the church.
Shame is a form of rejection.
Right. And you talked about that yesterday a little bit. I think you used the example of maybe not being dressed up enough.
Right.
Maybe that's not one that we see as much today.
Right.
But it's something that very likely could affect people and cause them hurt and pain. Yeah. So going on from there, you went on to say that Jesus cared more for others in particular this woman, he cared more for others than his own desires and his own reputation. And that was part of the reason why she was rejected, was because of other people's desires and their reputation. Some might say, and it's just a way of paraphrasing it, some might say Jesus cared more about people than he did the rules.
Right.
And I was wondering if you feel like those two statements go together and how we might be able to practice that today in our lives.
I think rules and relationships go together. I think that we protect relationships by rules. Like in a married relationship, if we expect our spouse to stay faithful to us, and they expect that from us. So that would be a rule that protects a relationship. But I think Jesus looked at that he invites people that other people rejected, that invitation is always opened. Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't consequences for sin, or that sin doesn't harm relationships.
Right.
But he was looking at that as an individual. That person is more important than anything else. That contact, that engagement, that relationship.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of instances where Jesus, is caring for somebody who was rejected, whether because they were sick or something they'd done, and you seem to have the Pharisees just about every time going, no, that's not right.
Right.
And he takes it upon himself and says, this relationship, helping this person, is more important than following your made up rules.
And he doesn't point out her sin. He doesn't judge her. He doesn't shame her in any way in this moment. Now, the woman caught in adultery, he says, go and sin no more.
Right.
But neither do I. But he said also, neither do I condemn you. So in both occasions, he was concerned about the individual. But I don't think he downplayed the boundaries that God sets up for us. So it's a fine balance.
Right.
But the relationship's important, because obviously without a relationship or loving, caring relationship, change doesn't occur.
Right. And you mentioned that when you said, this woman didn't change because she was judged. She didn't change because somebody told her it was wrong.
Right.
And so often, none of us change for that.
Right.
If you have somebody come into your job and say, hey, you're doing everything wrong, do it right next time. Right. That doesn't want to make you change. But a relationship with your boss where they come to you and say, really appreciate the work you do, you're a fine worker, you could improve in these areas, but you're a fine worker, and I really hope that you'll go on to do that. We're much more apt to change in that situation than, hey, do your job, and then walk away.
Absolutely.
And even though Jesus isn't our boss like that, he does treat us similar in that way. Now, I said a statement at the beginning of December, and it's a statement that I've heard quoted still by some people in the church today, so I feel like it's something that was memorable for people. In complete disclosure, I didn't make up this statement. I read it somewhere. I forget where I read it from, but I read it somewhere. It's not my statement. But basically I said, if Jesus started a church today, none of us would want to come. And that just basically means that the people that Jesus hung out with was people that were rejected, like you said. And none of us would think about that in that way. And I said this statement last month, but I was just wondering how I felt like this statement went along with what you were talking about, and I was just hoping that you would see how this story relates with this statement and maybe just give us some insight on that.
I think sometimes we who are churched or in the system of the church or go regularly, sometimes we're uncomfortable for people that don't necessarily fit into our expectations. And that's where I think Jesus, and hopefully our church, is welcoming and receive people from all walks of life. And I think that we see that more in church today, that people are searching for something, and they want to be accepted, they want to be welcomed, and Jesus invites everyone. For God so loved the world. Right. Jesus loved everyone, invites everyone. Right. So it's very, very inclusive. Now, he calls us to live in a different way and our lives to be transformed. Right. But we want to because of the relationship we have with Christ.
Right. Yeah, and we want people who maybe aren't like Christ to come to know him because, let's face it, before you and I ever knew Christ, we weren't like Christ.
Right.
But once we've come to
Right.
know him and we've encountered the love that he presents to us, it's life changing. It reminds me of the statement we say on our radio commercial and our TV commercial. If you've ever seen a commercial, you've probably heard the statement: "Our dress is casual, but our message is eternal."
Right.
And you know, when I hear that statement, I think of, you don't have to wear a suit and tie. But at the same time, what that statement also means is that, hey, we want you to come as you are.
Right.
You don't have to
Come
fix
as
yourself
you are.
up to
Right.
church. You don't have
Absolutely.
to. You don't have to correct everything in your life to come to church, because Jesus didn't require
Right.
people to fix themselves up and then come talk
Absolutely.
to them. He went to meet people where they were. The last thing I'll ask you about is Jesus invited people to follow him and or know God. Obviously, we can invite people to church ourselves, which is a great thing. You talked about
Right.
that yesterday, invite somebody to come on Sunday morning. But I was wondering what other invitations maybe you might have in mind for us to give to people in our lives. Maybe it's somebody who they're not quite ready to go to church yet. They're having a hard time with that, but we can still invite them in other ways. What would you think about that?
Well, I think, first of all, like yesterday, a young man that I've gotten to know through Toastmasters, came to a couple Toastmasters meetings, and I've been mentoring him. He's in college now, and he's struggling in some areas, but he likes to go running, so we go running every once in a while when he's home. Or he texts me, and I am interested in his life and how he's doing in school, and does he have a girlfriend, and is he making friends?
Right.
What's he eating? Does he cook? He lives by himself in an apartment.
Right.
And yesterday we just kind of met up, and we drove around Brazil, and I showed him some places that I have rentals, and so I showed him some of those and kind of what I do in my free time, and had a cup of tea and a cup of hot chocolate in my office, and just talked about life.
Just hung
and
out.
so
And
just
talked.
Yeah, or playing video games or whatever you do.
Right.
Whatever you do, watch a video or
Right. Man, just about showing somebody you care.
Right.
Maybe somebody
engaging with others in life.
Yeah.
Whether it's your running group or your yoga group or your Toastmasters group, whatever it is.
Right. Now, and I hope you're okay with me asking this, but how long did you know him before he? Because I know he came to church. He's come to church here before.
Several
but how long
times.
did you know him before he started coming?
Probably 2 or 3.
church?
I mean, probably a couple months.
Yeah.
And he just showed up on a Sunday morning. He asked, and I said, sure. So he comes, and now he's attending a church down where he's going to college right now, and I'm just really excited. And he says that really coming to Christ and getting to know Christ has given him hope and encouragement where before he wasn't sure that he really believed.
Right.
And so it's God doing a work in him through us.
Right.
And so we're just available.
Right. And that's the kind of life change that happens when you just simply show someone you care, show someone you love them, and show someone.
And God does that. God does it. I mean, it's really kind of strange.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really kind of strange that a young man, in 20 something, would want to come hang out with an old man like me and do stuff like go run or do whatever.
Well, you are a former youth minister.
Right, I'm a former youth pastor, but still. And so his parents came one Sunday just to check me out to make sure I was okay.
Make sure you're not a weirdo, right?
Yeah, right.
Well, we won't put that question on Facebook. Is Chris a weirdo? We won't put that one on
There you
Facebook.
go. Thank you.
No, well, thank you for your time, Chris. I think a lot of people enjoy this. I've heard good things about Behind the Sermon. If you enjoy Behind the Sermon, you can subscribe on our YouTube page, and that helps you to see every single one we post. You can also share the URL, share the link with maybe you have a friend who maybe they are struggling with being rejected or something like that. And you can feel free to share this with them or share the sermon with them. Really, we want to make sure our content is able to be shared with other people so that the things that you're learning and the things that people here are learning is able to be communicated everywhere else. And even though watching online is not as good as being here, it is an avenue that hopefully might help people be interested, and hopefully they will come and join us and be with us, like your friend.
Absolutely.
So, all right, Chris, any final thoughts?
Nope, just Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. All right, first Behind the Sermon of New Year. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it, and we will see you again next week.